Good morning. My name is Jessica Arendt. I will be moderating this panel today. A little bit of history on me. I've been in this industry probably since shortly after its inception, since the days of the conversations about Charlotte Figge and the parents moving to Colorado to save their children's lives. I have come into this industry and experienced this industry literally trial by fire. And championed for its regulation probably within my first 30 days of being in the industry. And I championed for its regulation because one of the first tasks I was asked to do for the company I worked for was to adulterate a certificate of analysis. And that was the moment I went, oh, I have found my calling. My company is Promesa, LLC. I'm a consultant in compliance and regulation, and I am Chief Compliance Officer for a brand called Cannabidiol Life, built on education first, people, plants, profit. Today, I stand on this panel and moderate an incredible team of gentlemen who all come from different walks of life for a common cause. White label manufacturing has come a long way since the early days of bathtubs, kitchens, bodegas, and garages. No joke, I've seen it all. And we all laugh because we've all seen it all and went, whoa. So we're going to jump right into it. I'm going to allow each of the panelists to take 2 minutes, introduce themselves, give you their passion play, and then we'll jump into questions. So Jim, hit it.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. It's nice to meet everybody. I'm Jim Bostic, CEO of Agronomics USA. We are a fully integrated industrial hemp company just south of Chicago, Illinois. Been in the industry for just over 5 years, so we've seen a lot of change take place from the early days of CBD and product manufacturing for this industry. We work directly with farms throughout the Midwest, mostly in Illinois. We've got about 50 different farm partners that, to survive in hemp these days, we actually help them take their plants and their hard work to finished consumer brands. So we feel that's the best strategy to focus on the end consumer products. So we've been private label manufacturing for 5 years now, have a lot of extensive experience and history in that. And so I'm honored to be here and hopefully answer some questions, and look forward to talking with the other panelists. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rocco Iannapolo. I'm the Director of Business Development for Cannabis Kitchen Supplies. We are an ancillary provider to the industry. Doesn't matter if it's marijuana or hemp that you're working with. If you're a manufacturer in this space, we provide commercial equipment and supplies to the industry. I've been involved in the industry since about 2014, started out in compliance work, and then eventually turned into a business development person for a commercial equipment supplier. Background before that was oil and gas industry, did a lot of different things in that space. My skill set is around supply chain optimization, and so that's the angle that I'll be kind of providing here for this panel is supply chain optimization and vendor relationships.
Hey, Brian Lytle here. So I've been in the CBD industry for about 7 years. In CBD years, that's a lifetime. But I started off in the wellness industry. I had a successful personal training company. Then I stumbled across CBD from a colleague who said, yeah, CBD is good for you. I'm like, okay. So I started giving it to clients that had inflammation of the gut, leaky gut syndrome specifically, and it started working. It helped them. So the discomfort started going down. Like, there must be something to this. So from there, I got into distribution. From distribution, I realized that not every company is who they said they were. So I wanted to take more control over it. So I started manufacturing products. I built a manufacturing company on the West Coast, then came over to the East Coast, built up a manufacturing company. So currently, my company is Brian Lytle CBD Consultant. I also have a couple retail stores called Hemp Spot, and a previous president of a company called Limitless CBD, based out of Ohio. So started off in the wellness industry, got into distribution, then manufacturing. Now I'm helping companies with distribution, picking a white label partner. I have 5, even though I have a real good relationship with Limitless CBD. Not every CBD company specializes in everything you need, so I have several that I work with specifically. So what I help companies with is essentially just picking the right partner, right? Figure out who your target market is, and then from there, pick the right products for that market.
Morning, everybody. I'm Matt Werner. I'm with Zuri CBD. We are a manufacturer just west of Cleveland, Ohio. My background prior to that, I was actually with GNC for almost 15 years. I ended my role there in franchise development, more or less. And I work with my current owner and VP with this company, mainly because of the way that they operate, the way that we do everything, the way that we manufacture. They started this company, wanting to be a marketing and branding company, and they toured other CBD companies out there, other manufacturers out there, and saw the bad ways that things were being done, as you spoke about, and things like that. So now we have close to a 50,000 square foot facility in Northeast Ohio where we manufacture. We have 2,000 square feet dedicated to our clean room. Follow all GMP certifications, things like that as well too. Department of Agriculture is big in Ohio, so we have to follow all of that. So I just have the passion for the company because we're doing everything the right way. We take every step, and we work with everybody to make sure that they can get what they need.
My name's Ethan.
You want? Is this thing on? It's on. It's on. It's on.
My name's Ethan Ware. I'm with Zoco USA LLC as the affiliate manager. Before that, I am a freelancer. I've worked with a lot of different brands such as Savage Enterprises, Delta Effects. I do a lot of content marketing and graphic design, creatives, things of that nature. And I'm looking forward to discuss everything with this panel today.
Okay. So, when we first began in this industry, forever and ago, most of us, our options in white label were limited to few. Can you compare the ethics of where we started to the ethics of where we are today? Hit it. You're the longest in the industry.
So you mentioned one thing earlier. Make sure you hear me. So you touched on it, doctoring in a C of A. And when I first started, no one knew. I had no idea what a C of A was, right? I remember talking to someone who said, "Do you have testing for it?" I'm like, testing? What do you mean? So I think a lot of people, they've had their fair share of challenges. And for me, what I have seen, I've seen the industry evolve from something of a dark black market to becoming a legitimate, reputable industry. So you have people that think they're going to get into the industry and become rich quickly, and they come to find out that they get washed out very quickly. So the people who are still around, I believe, have the best of intentions. So, but what I would say is that this industry is evolving very, very rapidly, and we have the people that are still around truly, I would believe, have the best intentions. But everything from doctrine of C of A's, that was like specifically to people, not putting, like, take Amazon, for example. You go to Amazon and those products, they don't have CBD in them, right? But they're being sold as CBD products. So those type of people are being washed out of the industry. But I would say that yes, the one of the reasons I got into manufacturing because I saw a lot of dishonesty. I wanted to take more control. I wanted to give people a product that I knew could help them. So that was a long-winded answer, but what I will say is this industry is really evolving to be something great.
Thank you. Today we have a myriad of options. Everyone seems to be putting CBD into products. You have CBD manufacturers that add CBD to product, and then you have product manufacturers that want to add CBD to their product. Does that make sense, right? So you have two very different types of entities. Some come from the experience of the fabrication or production of a consistent product in market that's mainstream, while others are coming to the table from a completely different perspective of plant science. Do you think that there's a difference in choosing one versus the other when it comes to choosing who you partner with for your private label?
I think when choosing it specifically, depending on what product you're looking for, vet out a company and find out what they're already manufacturing, figure out who's going to be the best at making the product that you're looking to have already. So if you can find a manufacturer that can infuse CBD or that's already making a CBD-based product that you're interested in, that's one of the best ways to do it, in my personal opinion.
What should you be looking for in that manufacturer?
So what we have a whole portfolio that we could send out and the different processes that we do and what we can handle from a manufacturing aspect for you or from a private label, but the guidelines in that state as well too. So if you're a manufacturer, for us, it's going to be out of Ohio. Are we within the Department of Agriculture's legislation? That's one of the things. So, and if that's different in Indiana or if that's different in California, you have to look into those things and make sure that company can prove that they're within those guidelines for you as well too. Because if they manufacture a product for you out of that state, no matter what, if it's coming to you, you hold the liability for that as well. So that's one of the biggest things you should be vetting out.
Jim?
Sure, definitely vetting your private label partner is very important. Standards that they have, practices that they have in place, certifications that they have in place. One of the key things to do, in the early days, as Jessica alluded to, a lot of this stuff was done in kitchens and basements and garages. These days we have grown as an industry to where we have fully certified manufacturing facilities that are handling this for us. Very easy to do an on-site visit, so I'd recommend doing an on-site visit and actually doing a tour of the manufacturing facility. I mean, any legitimate manufacturer would love to have you in to do a tour and see their facility and talk to you, face to face. So that's probably one good key thing is, do a good on-site tour and get to know that manufacturer to see what their capabilities are.
Which brings to light the first 24 months that we were doing this, you couldn't go visit anybody that was doing anything. They didn't let you in the door.
Yeah, they weren't legit. They didn't want you
legit
in their facilities and seeing, the bad practices that they were doing.
Rocco.
Yeah, actually something I wanted to add to that, going back to the first question about doctoring COAs and that type of thing, building the relationships with the other stakeholders that you need to produce your products. So it's not just doctoring this, it's getting a good lab partner to begin with. So doing some due diligence around finding the right folks and then, having those expectations with your white labeler. If there's testing that's required, making sure that they have all the appropriate relationships and procedures in place to continue the testing, because it's your brand, at the end of the day that you're trying to protect. So if you're putting a product out, you want to make sure that manufacturer for you is doing all the testing that you would be doing if you were doing it yourself.
I love that your position in the industry now is all of the supply needs for keeping the labs clean and sterilized, and I'm going to come back to that. Ethan, what should anybody know? Sorry, I'm going to move to the next question. Okay. What should anybody know pitfalls of stepping into this space?
To add to what he said, don't tell in this industry. It's covered up with NDAs and confidentiality agreements, things of that nature. Now that we're further along, things are improving to where everything's above board and transparency is focused on. But early in the first days, it was not that way at all. I would say do your due diligence when you get into this industry. Make sure you know who you're getting into business with, without a doubt. It could really, 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 really save you a lot of money.
Perfect, thank you. The 5 keys to white label success in the partnership and the relationship. How should your partner in the manufacturing support your brand? Where does it start and where does it end? Hit it.
I think being fair, especially right now, where we're at in the industry and we're at in the world with MOQs, understanding where they should be, not coming out and saying you have to have 5,000 units per SKU right off the rip because, somebody's just getting started. That's just not feasible. And then you're just working with the price and being fair with all that. I think that's one of the best things to offer right now as well.
So I think the sourcing for the CBD extracts that are going into the products is very important. You need to look at that and see if the manufacturer is providing the extracts themselves, or are they going to the marketplace to get those. Full chain of custody with these extracts is very important, tracking this all the way back to the farm that grew this material and keeping testing in place along the way, and full chain of custody on those extracts are also important. It's good sometimes to look for private label manufacturers that can do the extracts themselves and take control of that process from start to finish. That way you're just assured that they're doing the proper testing along the way and that they've got, the high standards from start to finish that they're putting into the process.
Just if I could add to that, ingredients. So it's very important to document who's responsible for what. So if you have an expectation of a certain ingredient being used, you need to make sure that that's very well communicated. And in addition to that, if you are ever in a situation, I know this isn't the topic of being in a recall. However, if you're not getting all of that information documented, if there's a problem down the road and you have to do a recall, if you can't demonstrate that it was only that batch, you now have to basically recall everything. So having a clear understanding, document it. If it didn't get documented, it didn't happen. So make sure there's a very clear understanding of that responsibility and what the expectation is about tracking various batches and ingredients and so forth.
I'd also add, yes, all those things are extremely important. I'd also, whether you're looking for a wet label, private label manufacturer, or already doing it. But so we'll take the scenario of you're looking to find a white label manufacturer. Before you even do this, really understand one, who it is you're working with. All the documentation is all extremely important, but also, are you ready to do it, right? So who is your target market? Who are you truly trying to reach? Because you don't want to go in and say, everyone's going to buy CBD. It's not the case, right? So if your target market is 25-year-old women that have one kid and earn an income of $40,000 a year, define that. But also think of your budget for this, right? Realistic, you can bootstrap it. I'll tell you, that was one of my biggest mistakes, is trying to bootstrap it. I've lost a lot more money trying to bootstrap. It worked out for me, but I had a lot of heartache and headaches along the way trying to bootstrap it. So realistically, think of the investment, right? There's people out there who say you can get in an industry for, you have $1,000. They're just trying to get your money, right? You're not going to be able to spend $1,000 and really do much with it in any business, let alone trying to create a brand. So really think of the budget in your target market when it comes to this.
Okay, I'm going to take this question a step further because I'm going to go into my own experiences on the private label side of things. The structure of your company, the design of your labels, the information on those labels, the QR codes themselves, the certificate of analysis, the website, the content for the website, the social media, all the things that go into a business. Do you feel that's the responsibility of the manufacturer, or is there a cutoff for the manufacturer realistically?
So I think there's a lot of responsibility that the manufacturer takes on because they are making these products that are going out into the marketplace. There is some responsibility that starts to transfer over when you get into the brand level because that brand also obviously has to be responsible for themselves and what they put out. So a good manufacturer will have the experience in the industry to help guide these brands into the proper compliance issues, testing, COAs, everything that they're going to need in order to successfully launch that brand and make it viable into the marketplace. So responsibility, I think, kind of lays on both people. There's definitely manufacturing responsibility, but also the brand as well.
I would say that would be more like added value. So everyone specializes in something, right? So the manufacturer, they're going to specialize in making certain products. They're not necessarily going to specialize in social media marketing. But if they can help you with that, I think that's a huge amount of value added.
As a manufacturer, we like to offer a start to finish guide period. We manufacture our own brand as well, and then we manufacture for others as well. So regardless of what is needed from a label standpoint, from content, from marketing, from the website, we like to be a one-stop shop and provide all of that. And obviously that could be roped into pricing and just kind of who you're working with and what is it they're looking to get from your company, period. But that is something that we like to value ourselves on because we can give you that from start to finish and help you build everything from the top to the bottom. So,
Ethan, you're the consultant.
I would feel that from a content aspect, a lot of it is going to be placed on the person that's actually sourcing it from the manufacturer. But they need to go back to the manufacturer and gain approval before they publish any of that content because they don't want to infringe on any intellectual property that manufacturer actually owns.
Beautiful. Should a brand have more than one production partner, more than one manufacturing partner? In other words, is there value in an exclusive relationship or are there pitfalls in the all the eggs in one basket concept?
I'll take the first stab at that. So certainly there is a, in terms of the, can you repeat the question?
Sure. Basically, I know. It's a really,
good question.
the
Oh, no, wait,
question
I
is
got it.
all
Okay,
the eggs
so-
in one basket. Should you
Yeah,
have more
so
than one?
I had several thoughts going in my mind at the same time. So
Multiple partners?
does anybody remember COVID? So here's what I got to say about that. The short answer is yes, you should have multiple sources for whatever service it is that you're providing. So I can tell you as a distributor, I don't manufacture a darn thing. I strictly distribute other products. So gloves, everybody in here, if you're manufacturing, I know you know about gloves. And you could not get gloves at the beginning of the pandemic. So fortunately, having the supply chain experience, I had multiple suppliers, but a lot of other people did not. So I had people coming to me left and right saying, where can we get gloves? So that would go across any product. So definitely you want to have at least a contingency plan set up. Maybe you're only using one manufacturer at a time, but you should have relationships with multiple, for whatever service it is, to be able to quickly jump. Because at the end of the day, if you're on a production schedule and all of a sudden one of your key ingredients isn't available, you better have another source for it. Because if you're going to go out into the marketplace in the middle of a pandemic and say, hey, can I buy? I was told multiple times. I had 2 suppliers for gloves. I now have 4, but when I went to get more, most of them were saying, we're not taking on new distribution partners. So you will be told no if you don't already have those things set up. So plan ahead, have multiple. Restricted in what you can get as a commodity. But even those commodities, if you were in the CBD space, some people did bounce from isolate to producing sanitizer.
A lot of people
They
do.
made all this sanitizer, and then they couldn't buy the 1-gallon bottles or the spray pumps to
Get it out.
package it. So have it all figured out in advance because you never know.
So I'll give a short story to that. We just had this experience. Our supplier of gummies discontinued our gummies. Now the problem might seem not a big deal. Everybody produces gummies, but they're done to spec. They fit the bottles just a perfect way, and I can't find them. And now I got to order 10,000 more. So we don't think about these different moving parts in the supply chain and the supply. Also, given where we are in trade overseas, particularly with our Asiatic friends, the acquisition of materials seems to be delayed in places like the Panama. Okay.
Or the Suez.
Or the Suez, exactly. So, and then there's that whole thing going on in China and Taiwan. So anybody that's, I don't know, waiting for vape parts now, it could be a long time. Okay. Give us one example of a successful or failed manufacturing relationship, and what made it successful and or fail, and how might it have been improved or salvaged? This is my final question, and then we'll be taking questions.
Okay, I'll jump in on this one. So 5 years ago, when we first started in this industry, we originally were going to come out with our brand of our own. We weren't expecting to get into product manufacturing. So at the time, there was limited sources you can go to get products manufactured. We had worked out a great deal with a company out of Colorado. I will leave the name out of it because I think they're still in business today.
It's how we met.
Yes. So we, negotiated a product line, negotiated a price, flew into Colorado to sign a deal. And the minute that we landed, they said, well, we can't honor that deal anymore. If you want to work with us, you need $50,000 monthly commitments, and it's going to take us 4 months before we can get product. And so it was a bait and switch, and we were kind of flabbergasted and, taken off guard. So that is definitely a bad experience. To improve on something like that, what we instilled in our company, where we talk about minimums, is we try to make it very easy for folks to get into this industry, because you're not going to come out in the CBD industry with $50,000, $100,000 product commitments per month. This is something that you have to kind of grow that brand over time. So improvement would be eliminating, the need for a minimum order quantity to be in place for the manufacturing.
Beautiful. Rocco.
Well, I kind of did allude to one of the stories was around the gloves and the sourcing and that type of thing. The only other one that comes to mind is you mentioned gummies. So we sell gummy manufacturing equipment, and one of our multi-state operators was looking for a commitment for a particular model that the manufacturer made, and they were discontinuing it. So long story short, we ended up having to go back to the manufacturer and lobby on our client's behalf to continue that, because they had a set of SOPs that they would license out to the other states that they were sending their brand to. And that kind of brings me to another point, is making sure you have SOPs so that when you give your recipe or your license to a manufacturer, that they're reproducing it, because it's your brand. So even though they're manufacturing it, it's your name that gets damaged if they do something wrong or take a shortcut. So having to secure end of life, if you will, on particular pieces of equipment, if that's a critical point in your operation that you got to have that particular thing, making sure that you do have it. So we did negotiate with the manufacturer, and we're able to cause them to continue offering that model. But these are the kinds of things that do take some relationship building and some proactive communications to understand if something's being discontinued and how you're going to deal with it, going forward.
Beautiful.
I would also add that just don't jump into it without preparation. So, I mean, I think I touched on this earlier. For me, I jumped right in, didn't do my due diligence, which turned out to be good because I ended up taking control of the process. But without doing my due diligence and talking to the manufacturers, finding out, One, did they have my best interest in mind? How were the products being made? What was the extraction method? And was it indeed what it's supposed to be tested at? So I would say the biggest thing for as far as like pitfalls for me personally was I didn't do enough preparation. So the solution to that is preparation.
I would say this isn't necessarily a success or a failure story, but it's just focusing on organic growth, period. I mean, nobody's going to go anywhere unless you organically grow things. So if you're manufacturing for somebody, or you need to find out who the end user is, do whatever it is you can, develop the relationship, and just make sure you have that organic, and provide the tools to make sure that your customer has that organic growth as well too. So many people get into this industry so quickly and want to make money, and the manufacturers and the other companies are selling, and they're just happy to make a sale at the end of the day to make payroll or whatever it is. That's not going to keep you around long term. So just work with the customer, do what you need to do. We talked about MOQs, and just make sure that you help them organically grow, because it organically helps everybody grow.
I would say I have a story that starts as a failure and transitions into a success. I first took over my role there at Zoco, and when they have an energy supplement. Well, when they did their initial order, it was a custom formulation, and the MOQ was so high that he was stuck with all of this product at this set cost. He didn't factor in anything into his marketing strategy. He had no budget for marketing. So he was stuck with all of this product, and I was told that we had 2 months before all of the product expired. So I came up with the idea of mass giveaway promotional. We used that. He went back through, raised another round of funding, expanded into a different product line, and kept on rolling. Just always pay attention to those MOQs, when you're making a custom formulation. Just pay attention.
Okay, and I'll give you mine. I was contracted to create the first water for CVS. And so we came up with a formula, and we got in bed with a beverage production company in Las Vegas that's well known for being in bed with lots of other beverages you consume every day. And we produced CBD water. It was great. It was awesome. Except we couldn't get it to test. And the reason we couldn't get it to test was because 2 years ago, we had no methodology for accurate potency testing in beverages. Because the molecules were nanoed, and I use that term loosely right now, that's another panel, they would basically nano, so they'd take the molecule, blast it into a smaller particle, and then they would emulsify it, which translates to wrapping it in something that's going to bind to the water, because water and oil seek their own level, and hello, it's oil, so it's separating, it's hydrophobic, doesn't like it. We couldn't get potency tests because nobody could read through the emulsifications. And we pulled an entire container, 28 feet, and 265,000 bottles. That was one of the most expensive lessons I've ever learned. But it forced the industry to come up with testing methodologies in the labs for those beverages, energy shots, and liquids. That's it for me for the questions on this panel. Let's ask some. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, gentlemen. My name is Danny Bramblett. I work for a company called Hemp down in southern Indiana in Jeffersonville. And we are a large extraction facility, so we work predominantly for the ingredients. So as manufacturers, as consultants, when you are looking at your ingredient supplier partnership, what is it that you're looking for? When we first started, we kind of did some research on other companies claiming to be extractors, and showed up and they were doing things in their washing machines or their bathtubs and whatnot with solvents that are very questionable. So when you're looking for your supplier partners, what is it you use? What's to vet them? And you had mentioned having multiple partnerships in case something in your supply chain goes awry. How do you factor that into choosing your supplier partners?
Anyone?
So just one word, just look for consistency. Consistency is going to be the most important factor that I'll look for. Find out what their current game plan is, game plan for the future, and find out, if they can indeed be a long-term partner.
One thing I'll add to that is don't recreate the wheel. So use your network, meet people in the industry that are doing similar things and try to learn from them. Lessons learned, much like what we're doing here today. But in addition to that, as you are getting your information, I would suggest, from a supply chain perspective, get multiple bids, try to get several in the industry that are doing what you're looking to accomplish, and obviously go through a process where you're documenting all and figuring out who does what, and you'll learn things along the way there to help you, vet your options and choose the right one.
I'd also add one more thing to that. So I mentioned consistency, but also right now, find out like who's on our team, what's their qualifications, right? So one thing I've really started to get in really a lot of interest in is how CBD and different vitamins and supplements interact together. So do they have a good grasp on the science, how CBD and other cannabinoids work with other supplements and vitamins, so that you can indeed have a market that's tailored to your target market and have a phenomenal product.
So one thing I'll add to that too is you sometimes have to specialize in the CBD extracts market. Distillates and isolates are a very saturated marketplace. There's a lot of manufacturers that also do their own extraction these days. A lot of equipment manufacturers that have, small run, small scale type of setups that make it a lot easier. So we like to go out and look for, labs that can specialize in certain things like CBN isolate or new cannabinoids that come out, so that we can keep pushing the limits and discovering new things that we can do with the cannabis plant. So specialization would be something I'd throw out there for you.
So something I'll throw into this, because I come from the tequila industry. And right. Okay. So my background is really I'm everybody's favorite girl, tequila and cannabis. What we saw when we started to regulate the tequila industry, which was not very long ago, was that we had artisanal brands. So we had tiers, right? And we had the artisanal brands, and then you had the middle of the run brand, and then you had the mass-produced brands. So Don Julio and Cuervo and, those. And then you have the little Molinales and Casanobles down here. It's, again, comes back to no matter where you are or what your strategy is in this industry, it's understanding that you have to go find a niche market. And for everything, there is a niche market. So my brand, as an example, is USDA Organic. I'm going after every, feel-good hippie on the planet that likes everything nice and vegan and nice and clean. By comparison to another brand like, Monarch Botanicals, and her niche market is farmers market, local moms with kids, local families. It's finding your hole. And you know what? We live in a world where my square peg isn't going to fit in anybody's round hole, trust me. And that's kind of how you go about it. It's niche. Next question, anybody?
Yes, actually I have. Can you hear? I've got two questions. The first one involves the issue, the federal issue as far as states goes. There's probably, 27 now that states that allow cannabis or the THC above a certain level. And what your thoughts are about the federal issue of getting the other states, or if they'll federally take care of it and make it a nationwide law that for everybody. In other words, make it a little more easier to work yourself through, I guess. And the other issue, law enforcement. Do you have any law enforcement issues because of the differences in the states and so on?
to kind of what I said earlier, I said we can control the controllables, I believe, and as long as we're practicing, within the guidelines within our states and our manufacturing processes, that's what we can do now. And we can just give our advice, to whoever, maybe wanting us to manufacture for them, out of another state as well. But I mean, specifically law-wise, and there's not too much I can speak as long as we're following the guidelines within our own states.
So I think the federalization will definitely happen as we see more and more states come online. It's just going to naturally be providing more pressure to the federal government to have to kind of legalize it. I mean, we're practically almost everybody has a medical program. As far as law enforcement goes, I think some of the bigger issues that we've experienced is understanding the difference between Delta-9 THC as still being a cannabis plant and CBD, industrial hemp, that looks and feels and smells, and there's really no difference that you can tell with these plants except for providing a test on it. So we actually got rated twice. Just a quick little story with that. When we first started with our first R&D to law enforcement, that industrial hemp was now able to be grown in Illinois and a legal, agricultural crop for folks. They didn't find us. They just found us by happenstance. They were on a service call, and the police officer saw, this field of what looked like to be, marijuana plants. And next thing you know, the SWAT comes in, and they're out with their guns and, bulletproof vests and whatnot. We were lucky that Illinois, supported us, and we, got on the phone with the ag department, with the police officers right on the spot, and everything got cleared up, relatively easy. But there, definitely communication from top line government all the way down to, officers that are on the, out in the fields out there would help.
So I'll just expand on this for you. Countries, we look at this with a broader scope. So at present, technically under the Farm Bill, you can push your product in all the states, but states' laws prevail. Now what we're seeing as of this year is registration of products in each state so that they can trace and recall as necessary, so you have to pay to play. And it shapes up pretty much like the TABC in the spirits industry. The international market is now blowing wide open. Romania, Czech Republic, Germany. The list is long. Mexico, Canada. And we sit right between those two countries. It will not be long before we get to federal regulation, I believe, and this is just opinion, and I have that like everybody has a back end, but it's my opinion that we will be federally regulated because money talks. And if you're not paying attention to our climate right now, societally speaking, money is the driving force. With all of these countries opening up, there's incredible value because A, this country is seen as the leader. We are seen as the most formidable leader in the best products that there are. And they want it around the world. So that's to our advantage. The higher the demand, the better chances we have of getting to that regulation and that ability to function in all of the states. I will leave you with one note. Have we answered all questions? Because we're running out of time. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
Can I ask one real quick? I do labeling for white label companies, so I make labels for gummies. And my question has to do with the actual lab testing itself. You guys have mentioned this several times. What would you say is a good rule of thumb for how often products are tested? Because I put batch numbers on things so that people know what they are. I don't see them change often enough, I think. So it's like you have a product that's been tested and you're still using that same COA over and over again for products that have been manufactured. Yes, I know there needs to be consistency, but how are you proving that that's the fact? And number two, how do we know that the lab that's doing this testing is legit?
I would say that every batch should be tested now to verify which batches, what products coming from, and that's going to be part of the manufacturing process, right? To make sure there's a batch number on each bottle that's being sent out, along with like an expiration date. but every batch should be tested, and there should be a batch number on the bottle.
When you say a batch, like I deal mostly in the gummy industry, you're talking about lots of batches being made. I mean, that would make the lab costs like through the roof, because that stuff's not free to do. And what I'm seeing in the industry is how are they selling these products for the price that they are and doing the lab testing? It doesn't make sense. Like, you can't sell this product for this cheap if you are following all the rules.
So it really depends on how large of a batch they're making. So if a manufacturer makes, 100,000 units of one, that's still going to be considered one batch. So they can have that for a little while. So now, but there are some manufacturers that make it each. I know for me personally, we used to make small batches because we didn't have all the machinery initially to make larger batches. So that's going to be more expensive, especially for the manufacturer, plus the end user.
So there are some rules in place. We have some clarifications on the hemp rulings. That includes testing has to be done with a DEA lab, DEA approved lab. And I'm sorry to step in here. And because we're running out of time. So there is that piece of it. Some manufacturers go with the mother load of the oil, in which case they got it in a gallon in all probability, or that type of volume. And then the ancillary products that come off of that are separate potency tests. Each manufacturer does it a little bit differently because states' rights now, states' rulings are each different. We have 5 or 7 states now that have different regulations for tracing and lot. The short answer is we assume there's a shelf life of about a year, but we work in 6-month to 12-month increments by and large. Would you agree?
Sure. Yep. 100%. And good point that Jessica made is, there's different test points along the way. So you can save some cost by, testing at different points. So for instance, we test pesticides, we test heavy metals at the plant level, we test solvents at the crude level, solvents at the distillate, isolate level, and then potency, then that leaves potency, microbials too are up front, and then potency is left for finished products. So you don't have to necessarily pull full panels on all the finished products. I mean, there's obviously cost to testing that comes into play. So if you can do some upstream testing, that will save some cost because that same plant material that you created a large amount of extract for is going to be valid for as long as that extract, resides into the process. And the same on the extracts that are being created too. You're creating these in larger volumes, so you can test at the extract level, and then you have a solvent-free, product because you've tested it at the, at the crude level.
And make no mistake, we still have some foul players. So, there are the chances that they're not doing it properly and they are riding that train. But I come from the state of Florida. We were the blueprint for regulation in CBD. And I promise you this, from state to state, that's coming to a quick end because the USDA comes through my front door every 3 months like clockwork. Any other questions?
I have a question concerning what you were saying about the international, it expanding quite a bit, kind of blowing out there, and wondering if there's an export criteria or anything like that that goes along with.
Yeah, it's country by country. Some countries are medical. So Peru, Brazil, my brand has just landed in the first quarter in those countries. We went through their medical programs. It was a requirement to work through the government. They have specialized teams for that, and we had to jump through some crazy hoops. I'm still waiting for a shipment to arrive in Goa, in India. I've been waiting for like a week every day. And there are some crazy requirements there too. Each country is completely different. Going to Japan, going to Korea, they have to be THC free. You have to be able to prove, track, and trace all the way back to the plant material and its soil. So yes, every country is completely different. It's like going state to state here. And I'm more than happy to sit down and talk to you after this if you like. Any other questions?
Hey, Jessica, I'll just add to that too. When you're shipping product into other countries, there are different certifications that may be required as well. So One I can give an example of is if you're shipping to Germany or any European country, your facility has to be not CGMP, but EGMP. So there's another standard for shipping into European countries, and it may vary as the industry continues to evolve. So you definitely want to have some legal counsel to help you understand what you don't know, because I can tell you there's a lot of people in our industry that don't know what they don't know, myself included, and it pays to get help from the people that do know to keep you out of trouble.
I'd like to also add that in an international right now. Lastly, if any, I have a bunch of resources on my website for white label, content marketing, those kind of things at brianlytlecbd.com. So everything from picking a white label manufacturer to working with a label, putting the right things on a label, those type of things.
Okay, so I will be available out in the hall to speak after this if anybody is interested. As I said, I'm repeating myself. I specialize in compliance, global, everything from content to legal. Thank you so much for sitting in on our panel today. We're looking forward to sitting with you on other panels. Any questions, please find us.